rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. You know, when these things happen, you kind of have to take a moment and take stock, not only in your life, but also the lives of others, especially those that were affected. For an example, one of my Whiskey Warrior P1s just mentioned in the Rumble chat that she just found out that her daughter's mother-in-law's nephew, so there was a connection there, was on the plane that crashed and that collided and crashed. And so anyway, he apparently was on his way home for the weekend to visit his wife and kids and died. Presumably died at this point on that plane. Now, there's a lot of things that are running around about it, and we'll get into those in just a minute. But what I'd like to do before we get anything going here is essentially I would like to offer up a moment of silence for all the souls that were lost on the plane. So if you happen to be wearing a hat, please remove it, like I will here in a second. And let's just have a moment of silence for the people who have passed. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, that's, you know, well, I'll get started here in just a minute. Let's go ahead and kick off the Pledge of Allegiance. Tonight's Pledge of Allegiance is going to be led by Judge Wild. So if you are of mine, please stand, remove your hats if you're wearing one, and place your hand over your heart and listen to Judge Wild as he leads us in the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh yeah, hurrah!
Thank you, Judge, for sending in that wonderful rendition of the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would like to hear your rendition played here on the program, all you need to do is record yourself performing it in your style, and then take that file, whatever it is, audio, video, whatever, and send it into fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans at AmericanPerspective.online. Also, too, tonight's headline sponsor is the Institute on the Constitution. Institute on the Constitution was established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one singular mission, and that is to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government as defined in the Declaration of Independence in the following 3 key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link, iotc.americanperspective.online, to sign up, and while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course material and information. My affiliate link, once again, is iotc.americanperspective.online to get great content to learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process. That's iotc.americanperspective.online, or if you just want to purchase this fabulous Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution to support the show, go to constitution.americanperspective.online. Check this thing out. It's got an 1/8 of an inch of Saddleback leather wrapped around pages that are water and tear resistant, and no cheap glue binding here. They stitched it all the way through the leather. It's got a 100-year warranty against materials and workmanship defects. If something does happen to it in that time period, send it into the manufacturer, and they will either fix it or replace it for free. It is buddy tested, buddy approved, Billy tasted, Billy approved, and my youngest whiskey warrior has ensured that the quality contents within will help you study for your civics badge in Scouts. It will probably also help you study for your civics test. Once again, go to constitution.americanperspective.online and pick yours up today. All right. So let's get on with, again, this tragedy. Details are still coming out. Okay. Details are still coming out, and we've got to be honest with ourselves in the fact that, yes, there is probably not one singular silver bullet that will tie back to the cause of this thing, but there will be probably several things that come back. Now, originally, as things were occurring, this happened late last night, while things were occurring, things were coming in. There were questions as to whether or not there were individuals who were alive. There was 64 passengers on the plane. As I mentioned earlier, one of my Whiskey Warrior P1s is tangentially connected to one of them. There was 4 crew members, and from what I understand, there were 3 crew on the Army helicopter that the plane collided with. There really isn't much information at this point in terms of, what was going on, but our understanding, from what I have been able to gather and verify, the Army helicopter was on a training mission. And also, too, the plane was on approach to Reagan International. I've flown into that airport before, on runway 33. And as far as, that's a very busy airport. I don't think anybody really realizes how busy some areas of the country actually are. Now, I've flown quite a few places in this country, and I can tell you that there are certain areas such as New York City, which has both JFK and LaGuardia very close to one another. Also, too, you have in the LA area, you have LA, you have I think it's Burbank, Orange County, and I think one other airport in that area. That is all, they're all very close to one another. So to have incidences, the low number of incidences that we have in our history with regards to this, I mean, air travel still is the quote unquote safest way to fly. That being said, there's not a lot that, anyone can do. It's not like these planes can just stop in the middle of the air. The helicopter potentially could have, but or at least made an attempt. But the plane itself, there's no way for it to stop midair on its way into land. Now there is a grainy video on some traffic camera or some kind of security camera that was, a few miles away that caught the instant that the two collided with one another. And unfortunately, at least as of now, there are no survivors. There's none expected anyway, and they have been able to recover about 28 bodies is the last count that I had heard of this. Now, whenever something like this occurs, obviously one of the first things that everybody does is they look toward the president to make statements. And while I reserve the right to basically say that, yes, I was slightly disappointed in the some of the phraseology and the particular angle of discussion that the president put out. The fact of the matter is that what he is saying about it is probably not that incorrect with regards to the particular situation that developed and potentially contributed to the crash. But this is one of the things where I keep saying, and I take a lot of criticism for this, where Donald Trump isn't necessarily a excellent public speaker. Okay. And unfortunately, when he does go off script, this is part of the problem that I personally have with our commander-in-chief, unfortunately. But that's not why we hired him. We didn't hire him to be an excellent orator. We hired him to do a job and to get the job done, and he will go ahead and make sure of this. But one thing that the left seems to want to do is, of course, throw him in and under the bus for a situation that realistically has been around for a very long time. I mean, we had a president in office for 4 years. We had a secretary of transportation in Pete Buttigieg, and even Pete Buttigieg knew that there was a problem or a challenge with some of the things that that very likely could have contributed to this particular incident. So anyway, he, in his statement, and again, personally, I wouldn't have, I wouldn't have gone this tactic, but, again, Trump's not me. I'm not president, and I wasn't the one in front of the cameras. But Trump blasted the diversity hiring and, of course, Pete Buttigieg with regards to the crash, and this was in the briefing that he held this morning about it. And again, I'm just pointing out and going to point out that, yes, there are several areas where this past administration and this government had placed diversity, equity, and inclusion above what would have been merit-based. And so, honestly, I mean, his comments are not too out of line for what he normally does. Just because of the fact that this, again, goes right along with his idea and his vision and his plan for his administration and for the government of the United States. And whether or not I agree with his delivery or anything else makes no difference. He does have some very valid points to discuss with regards to this. One of the things that has come out since this tragedy is the fact that in the post-millennial, all right, here, I'll go ahead and show this to you. So in the post-millennial a report came out from the FAA. I missed the button. There it is. A report came out in the FAA, or from the FAA, that reveals that staffing at Reagan National itself was not normal at the time of the crash. And by not normal, they're basically saying that they didn't have enough controllers like they normally should have during that time and for that amount of traffic. Now, whether or not this is the actual cause of the incident at hand, we don't know, and I'm hesitant to go down that path. However, it is certainly something that we need to take a look at. Okay. And essentially, here's what it says in the Post-Millennial, and this, of course, is taken from the New York in part from the New York Times. An internal preliminary Federal Aviation Administration safety report on the Wednesday night fatal collision between an American Airlines flight and a Black Hawk Army helicopter has revealed that staffing at the air control tower at the DC airport area was not normal. It continues here by saying that the internal safety report, which was reviewed by the New York Times, stated that a number of staff at Reagan National Airport's air traffic control tower was, quote, not normal for the time of day and volume of traffic. The controller in the tower Wednesday evening was handling both helicopters in the airport's vicinity, as well as instructing planes that were departing from and arriving on the airport's runways. Now, the New York Times noted that those jobs are typically assigned to two separate controllers. Two separate controllers. Now, the tower at DC's closest airport has reportedly been understaffed for years. And the claim of the report is that it's nearly a third below targeted staff levels as of September of 2023. Now, they only have 19 fully certified controllers, and many controllers there have had to work up to 6 days per week and up to 10 hours per day. Now, a lot of people who fly are very aware of the fact that there are strict FAA rules in terms of pilots and crew providing or receiving the proper amount of rest. I believe, I don't know this for a fact, but I believe it's around 8 hours in between flights. And I've actually even had some of my flights delayed due to a crew member not having enough rest or running out of actual time. And this is more common, but running out of actual time on their day. And the reasons for this, I mean, again, it boils down to safety. After a certain amount of time, I mean, even trucks, trucking has the same kind of restrictions, not the same restrictions, but the same type of restrictions, with the fact that there are studies that demonstrate and show that you can lose focus, lose attention during a specific time frame, and especially particular hours of the day. And so a lot of this boils down to whether or not, and this is one of the questions that I'm sure the NTSB is going to go through, but whether or not that FAA controller in particular had enough rest, was on, say, extended hours, and so on and so forth. So, again, we're not exactly sure. And good question, too, is whether or not this particular individual had enough hours, had enough, in terms of training. How long were they on the job? Had they ever done that before? Because sometimes just inexperience from, not from being able to handle just one thing, which would be the, planes taking off and coming in versus having to handle both the helicopters in the area and the planes. It might have just been a bit too much. Again, not blaming anybody, not trying to assign blame here, just simply asking what would be logical questions. Now, a May 2024 report, this again back in the post-millennial piece, from CNN stated that air traffic control stations across the country were around 3,000 controllers short at the time. In the 2023 fiscal year, the FAA had hired around 1,500, just a little over 1,500 new controller candidates, but lost 1,300 of their employees during the same time frame. Now, for those of you that do math fairly quickly, that means they only had a net gain of around 200, a little over 200. Now, the 1,300 employees that left were included retired employees, candidates who dropped out of training. 400 people failed the FAA's academy, and additionally, another 109 who had been farther along in training had dropped out as well. Former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg in 2023 lamented that air traffic control shortages in New York, and he called that unacceptable, and that was per an article in Reuters. And this, of course, came as the FAA extended cuts to its minimum flight requirements at area airports over staffing shortages. With the New York terminal radar approach control staffing sitting at just 54% of recommended staffing at the time. So, again, this flight 5342 from American Airlines was approaching Reagan National's runway 33 when the plane collided with a Black Hawk helicopter that was from the 12th Aviation Battalion out of Fort Belvoir. It itself was on a training flight over the Potomac River. So, anyway, 3 people were aboard the helicopter and 64 passengers and crew were aboard the American Airlines flight. Again, short staffing is one. Having longer times at work is another. And then, of course, depending upon who it was, because that's another question, was training and experience as well. Now, reportedly, the helicopter pilots did have night vision goggles. Now, whether or not they actually had them on at the time is a definite question for that particular area. Night vision goggles, for those that don't know, at least when I was in the service, it was difficult. Your depth perception, it's not like what you see, necessarily what you see on TV. Okay, your depth perception can be thrown off by the night vision goggles because generally what happens is you're going from a binocular into what is called a monocular, and that's the standard, or at least what I've seen is the standard night vision goggles, and so your depth perception gets thrown off. Plus, depending upon the style and the quality of the night vision goggles, and don't get me wrong, the military gets probably the upper echelon of the quality of it, but it still turns everything that you're seeing from color into more of a black and white scenario, and our eyes are not quite as effective in those types of scenarios. And it could also be, shades of green as well. I mean, that's what you typically see. but you could also, it throws off, again, your depth perception. I've driven my, military vehicle with night vision goggles on before, and it is hard. It's difficult to judge distance in these things. And so if they were to have had them on, it would be a bit of a challenge, to necessarily judge how, especially a fast moving object like a plane, no matter how big it is, it would be difficult to judge where that was in relation. Now, in the video, you can see, and you know what? There's a link here. Let me see if there is a video. Let's take a look real quick here. Okay. Yeah, they don't have it. All right. But one of the things that you may not be aware of is that in the video, from what I can see, yeah, so in the video, from what I could see is that the airplane itself had its landing lights on, and those things are awfully bright. And if the pilot had his night vision goggles on, I can tell you that because the night vision goggles are obviously designed to enhance the infrared light coming in, getting hit with a bright light tends to blind you. Even light from a flashlight can blind you in one of those things. So it is entirely possible, as a suggestion or as a possibility of it, is that when they were flying around with their night vision, they turned and happened to look, or the pilot turned and happened to look and see that the plane had turned on its landing lights and temporarily blinded the pilot of the helicopter such that he did not know how close he actually was. You also have a couple of other factors that will probably end up being discussed and hopefully revealed, which is that I don't know if anybody has been on a plane, but most of the time the planes will be slightly nose down as they're descending, but then after a certain period of time, they go to more of a nose up attitude. And when they do that, the pilots in the cockpit, if the instrumentation isn't working right, which is, again, is another possibility, but you know, as the plane tips up, the nose comes up and they can't see, physically see over the nose. Same thing with the helicopter. The helicopter itself is not really designed to be looking up when you're flying because, I mean, yes, you do have limited vision upward, but it has much better vision looking downward because you're mostly, the Black Hawks are designed for more ground operations and paying more attention to the ground. There's also been suggestions too that potentially the pilots of the plane were so focused on the landing strip, you know, you get a target blindness. I'm going to use that terminology, but basically where you focus so much on something in front of you that your periphery goes away. And so you tend to, I mean, again, when you get that into that kind of a line, they may, and also too, keep in mind, many of these pilots, they're not expecting anything to come at them from the sides. So, all of this, everything that I'm talking about is aligning up to a potential tragedy, as the cause, and just a series of potentially small errors, not necessarily just one error, but a series of potentially small errors all happen to align at once to a tragic and very unfortunate end. So, yeah, it's just one of those things that's going to take us some time, obviously, to sift through. Now, I heard tell, and I don't know for sure, but I heard tell that the Black Hawk may not have what is considered a black box. But even then, you may not, because it isn't a mechanical failure, that black box from the plane may not necessarily, may not have necessarily been, any kind of, there may not be anything to be revealed by the black box. So lots of questions, lots of, unanswered points to be made across all of this. And it is a tragedy. A complete tragedy for sure. And hopefully in the coming days, we'll be able to get more details and understand a little bit more. But yeah, it's definitely a sad day for those. And especially now that we know that one of our own family has knowledge of and a relationship with one of the people that have tragically been killed because of this incident. Our hearts go, or our prayers, thoughts and prayers and hearts go out to all of the family members for this tragedy. Okay, so moving on a little bit, there is a new bill being produced or being proposed in Congress that I actually think absolutely should happen. This bill, this is according to the Epic Times, this bill is called the Stolen, or is being referred to as the Stolen Valor Bill, and it looks to seek harsher penalties for falsifying military service. And basically, stolen valor, for those that don't know, is defined when a person falsely claims to have served in the military, pretends to have made sacrifices in combat, or wears a fake uniform adorned with counterfeit medals. The biggest and most publicized stolen valor had to deal with Tim Walz, where he claimed to be a retired command sergeant major when he actually was just a retired master sergeant. And claiming that he had gone to war and had not spent just time in Italy, that he had, and a couple of other things too that he claimed. But anyway, so this is, in my mind, this is a good deal. This is a good thing. And we should at least, this shouldn't even be, this should be a no-brainer, to be honest with you, because just like somebody who impersonates a police officer, somebody who impersonates being something that they weren't in the military. I mean, I'll be the first one to tell you, I got out of the service after 4 years. I was never in combat. However, did I serve during a combat deployment? Yes, but I was in completely stateside the entire time. I did not gain anything or any kind of, I have full respect for those that actually went and served in combat versus my service. And in fact, oftentimes when I find out somebody did go to combat, that I feel as though they are elevated one more step up. Okay. But anyway, the point being here is this is an Arizona proposed legislation. And it builds on the Federal Stolen Valor Act of 2013, which made stealing valor a felony crime while implementing stricter enforcement and penalties, according to Arizona State Representative Walter Blackman. And this is the bill's primary sponsor. Blackman says it embodies the values that we hold dear as veterans. We need to send a strong message to people that want to steal our valor. He says, we've had a number of stolen valor cases in this state that caused Arizona, I think he meant cost Arizona, upwards of $40 million through veterans benefits, contracts, job placement, and so on. He says this is a push to hold these people accountable. If they have to go to jail because of it, they will go to jail. And according to the Armed Forces Benefit Association, stolen valor is essentially a lie, which is true. Now, it also says, although it is not illegal to make up things to impress friends at a party, the association has stated that stolen valor is more complicated than that, which is why it's considered a crime. So, yeah. Anyway. Military impersonation is a similar offense committed willfully and wrongfully, with or without the intent to defraud, the organization states on its website. And that organization, by the way, is the Armed Forces Benefit Association. So they kind of give examples here. One being the California Stolen Valor Act makes it a misdemeanor for a person to falsely claim to be a veteran or former member of any branch of the military in connection with specific acts. That includes anyone who pretends to be a veteran, whether through verbal statements or written claims, as well as those who wear military decorations to deceive others. In Florida, soliciting charitable contributions or other benefits while falsely claiming to be a veteran is a felony. And under the New Jersey Stolen Valor Act, it is a crime for someone to falsely claim to have received a military decoration or medal. In Texas, in July of 2024, Representative Beth Van Doyen reintroduced the Valor Earned Not Stolen Act after the original bill failed in 2021. That legislation seeks to increase the maximum penalty for stolen valor from 1 year to 3 years in prison, aligning it with the penalty for impersonating a public official. And I kind of agree with that. So it looks like there's a push on to try and protect the sacrosanct military forces and claiming, of course, being a veteran. Now, I have a VA card, so I can prove that. That's my proof. But I also have a DD-214 and all those other forms and things and else. So I definitely don't need to worry about it. But anyway. All right, let's get into, of course, the further confirmation hearings. As we know, RFK Jr. stepped onto the plate yet again today. He stepped into it yet again today. And also, too, here from the Daily Wire, Pam Bondi has advanced now out of committee to the full Senate. She has been voted through, even though Democrats tried to delay things. On Wednesday, which was yesterday, the Judiciary Committee voted 12-10, of course, along party lines, to favorably report Bondi to the full Senate. Leadership may now move towards a final confirmation vote, for which Bondi will only need a simple majority. So she has now moved out of committee into the full option of the Senate. Senator Rick Scott from Florida said in a post on X, "Congrats to my good friend Pam Bondi. She will do an incredible job, and I look forward to voting yes on her confirmation on the Senate floor." Judiciary Democrats, of course, said that Republicans just advanced Trump's Attorney General nominee to the full Senate, despite her clear intent to side with wealthy special interests and Donald Trump over the American people. No, yeah, these guys are, they're just making up all kinds of crap. Anyway, the Senate Judiciary had planned to meet on Bondi's nomination last week, I think I missed it. It's the Senate Judiciary Committee. I think I said the whole thing. Anyway, they had planned to meet last week to get her out of that committee, but the panel announced that its Democrat members instituted a 7-day hold, which is allowed by the rules. Now, for those that don't know, Pam, I keep saying Pat, Pam, I got to remember that. Pam Bondi was the former Attorney General of Florida. She is a Republican, and she testified before the panel in a confirmation hearing earlier this month and discussed her priorities if she were going to be confirmed to lead the Department of Justice. She said, "I will fight every day to restore confidence and integrity to the Department of Justice and each of its components. The partisanship, the weaponization will be gone. America will have one tier of justice for all." So anyway, she apparently clashed, of course, with Senators Adam Schiff, who is afraid for his life. No, not his life, but definitely afraid. And Alex Padilla, who are both from California and both Democrats. Bondi declared in an exchange with Schiff, "Senator, what I can tell you is that I will never play politics. You're trying to engage me in a gotcha. I won't play politics with any ongoing investigation like you did." Yeah. So, anyway. So far, Trump's had gotten 6 cabinet nominees confirmed, despite the efforts from the Democrats to impede the process, such as forcing procedural votes, but they still have several more under consideration. So, anyway. Okay. And the other one, which is he's on Capitol Hill right now. He's on Capitol Hill right now, from what I understand. Kash Patel. Here in Red State, Kash Patel's hearing starts off with a bang. The future FBI director cooks Democrats. That's a hell of a headline. Well, let's just take a listen to what Senator Grassley was talking about with the FBI weaponization.
Now I'd like to call the committee's attention to something I'm going to share with you, information about the FBI's that's never been made public before. Do you have those? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. In my hand are a series of FBI emails. The first is an email that Thibault sent to subordinate agent on February the 14th, 2022. He said, quote, "Here's a draft opening language we discussed," end quote. The draft opening was attached and it included material that would later become part of Jack Smith's elector case. The second email, February 24th, 2022, email from Thibault to John Crabb, a prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia, saying, quote, "I had a discussion with the case team, and we believe there is predication to include former President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, as a predicated subject," end quote. This FBI case would later be codenamed Arctic Frost. The third email, February 24th, 2022, email from Thibault to John Crabb, noting that the Attorney General and the FBI approval will be sought to open the case. The fourth email, February 25th, 2022, email from Thibault, subordinate agent, saying they added Trump and others as a criminal subject to the case. Thibault responded, quote unquote, "perfect." The fifth email.
So I'm not going to go the rest of the way on this, but you can see there was a series of stuff where he's talking about the origins of what was called Arctic frost, the code name given to the government's attempts to prosecute Donald Trump for supposedly election-related crimes. All of these emails, of course, show clear collusion between officials in an open investigation without a viable, what they call, predicate. So, here, just to give you kind of a listen, here is Kash Patel's opening statement.
Senator, this may be one of the scenarios that most uniquely qualifies me to take command at the FBI. Having been the victim of government overreach and a weaponized system of justice and law enforcement, I know what it feels like to have the full weight of the United States government barreling down on you. And as the Biden Inspector General determined, those activities by the FBI and DOJ were wholly improper and not predicated upon law and facts. I will ensure, if confirmed, that no American is subjected to that kind of torment, to that kind of cost, financially and personally. And most importantly, I will make sure that no American is subjected to death threats like I was, and subjected to moving their residences like I was, because of government overreach, because of leaks of information about my personal status. If confirmed as FBI director, Mr. Chairman, you have my commitment that no one in this country will feel that pain.
Senator Durham.
Well, there he is. That's a glimpse into Kash Patel. And of course, Kash does have personal interest in this because he was subjected to a series of baseless investigations that ultimately led to nothing at all. So, yeah, Senator Dick Durbin, Dick Durbin, the guy that says that the Great Replacement theory doesn't exist, even though he advocated for it in a Senate speech. Anyway, Dickie Durbin began by ranting about January 6th. Let's take a quick listen.
38 criminal convictions, 38. He'd been sentenced to 14 years in prison. He was released because of the president's unconditional clemency, which was given to him as well. So I guess my question is this. Was President Donald Trump wrong to give blanket clemency to the January 6th defendants?
Thank you, Ranking Member. A couple of things on that. One, the power of the presidential pardon is just that, the president.
Well, I concede he has the authority. I'm asking, was he wrong to do it?
And as we discussed in our private meeting, Senator, I have always rejected any violence against law enforcement, and I have, including in that group, specifically addressed any violence against law enforcement on January 6th. And I do not agree with the commutation of any sentence of any individual who committed violence against law enforcement.
So do you think that America is safer because these 1,600 people have been given an opportunity to come out of serving their sentences and live in our communities again?
Senator, I have not looked at all 1,600 individual cases. I have always advocated for imprisoning those that cause harm to our law enforcement and civilian communities. I also believe America is not safer because President Biden's commutation of a man who murdered 2 FBI agents, Agent Kohlers and Williams' family, deserve better than to have the man that point blank range fired a shotgun into their heads and murdered them released from prison. So it goes both ways.
Leonard Pelletier was in prison for 45 years. He's 80 years old, and he was sentenced to home confinement. So he's not free, as you might have just suggested.
He killed 2 FBI agents.
That's true, he did, and he went to prison for it and should have.
Oh, as usual, they're just pulling out whatever they can to make things sound worse than what they actually are. Senator Lindsey Graham gave Patel a chance to talk about the abuse that he's taken due to the weaponization. Here's his answer.
Because of my personal information being released by Congress, I was subjected to a direct and significant threat on my life. And I put that information in the record. I had to move. In that threat, I was called a detestable, and I'll apologize if I don't get it all right, but it's in the record, a detestable sand nigger who had no right being in this country. You should go back to where you came from. You belong with your terrorist home friends. That's what was sent to me. That's just a piece of it. But that's nothing compared to what the men and women in law enforcement face every day. And that's why they have my support.
Well, as you can see, Patel definitely is backing the blue for sure. But one thing that was noted, and Buddy over on Rumble pointed it out, that Dick Durbin said that January 6th protesters beat a cop to death that day. Again, keep in mind, no police officers died on January 6th. The only one that died was 2 days later that the Democrats keep trying to tie to January 6th, and that was Brian Sicknick. Brian Sicknick died due to natural causes 2 days later. And even though the coroner's report tried to tie it to, quote unquote, the bear spray that he was reportedly sprayed with, there's no evidence outside of that suggestion. There's no evidence that that actually was the cause of his death. He died from remember it was either an aneurysm or an embolism, one of the two. But it was a health issue. It had nothing to do with actual January 6th. So, yeah. Anyway, Kash Patel seems to be standing up and on his own 2 feet as far as that goes, as all of Trump's nominees have done for this. And so that actually is great news. And so hopefully, Coco Domingue points out that, a healthy 40-some-year-old wouldn't die from strokes from bear spray. Yeah, exactly. That's the point that I'm making, is that it's questionable in terms of trying to tie that together. Well, we'll see what happens with these confirmation hearings. Again, Pam Bondi has moved out of committee. RFK Jr. is still in front of the committee, as is Kash Patel as of right now. So we'll just have to kind of see where these things go. But as expected, the Democrats are going to drag their feet on all of these things. And oh my gosh. Okay. So Mark over on Facebook gave me the medical definition. Acute brainstem and cerebral infarctus due to acute basilar artery thrombosis. Basilar artery thrombosis. Yeah, okay. That's a mouthful. I don't have a medical degree, so I can't tell you. Anyway. So yeah, it's just whew. All right. Well, the Department of Justice, of course, under we don't even have Pam Bondi in yet, but the acting Department of Justice director right now is basically kind of cleaning up a little bit over the some of the lawsuits that the Biden DOJ brought. One of them, you'll recall, was the state of Virginia shortly before the elections went through and cleaned up their voter rolls by taking off non-citizens. Okay. And the DOJ, Biden's DOJ, went ahead and sued the state of Virginia with regards to that, because of the fact that they did remove the non-citizens. Now, the DOJ, the new DOJ, according to Just the News, the new DOJ has dropped the Biden admin suit. They filed a notice of voluntary dismissal of the case on Tuesday in federal court. The department had sued Virginia in October, and a federal judge ordered that the Commonwealth reinstate the non-citizens to its voter rolls after removing them. However, days later, the U.S. Supreme Court lifted the order that temporarily suspended Virginia's voter roll maintenance program, allowing for the Commonwealth to keep the non-citizens off its voter rolls. And just for the record, Virginia had removed about 1,600 suspected non-citizens in that. Well, now the DOJ has dropped that suit. So that's going away and is gone. And once again, Trump scores another win. This time, it's against Mark Zuckerberg. That's right. Here in the Daily Caller, Trump scores a $25 million settlement from Meta over his suspended accounts. Now, keep in mind, Trump has won $15 million from ABC with regards to the George Stephanopoulos, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's who it was, who kept calling him a rapist. So there was a defamation of character there. And now he's won this $25 million settlement from Meta over the suspension of his accounts. So Meta agreed on Wednesday to pay the $25 million to settle President Donald Trump's 2021 lawsuit against the tech giant for suspending his accounts on its social media platforms following January 6th, according to multiple reports. The settlement also follows that Mark Zuckerberg's Meta is going to make a $1 million donation to Trump's inaugural fund in an apparent attempt to align the company with the president. Okay. And Meta, who owns Instagram and Facebook, will pay $22 million to a fund for Trump's presidential library, which is also, by the way, the same place that ABC is spending. So based on that, Trump now has like $37 million in his funding for his presidential library. And the remainder of that $25 million settlement is going to go to covering legal expenses and compensating additional plaintiffs that were involved in the case. Company spokesman Andy Stone confirmed, according to NBC News. So, yeah, he's won it again. He's won another one. So, there you go. That's quite interesting. All right. So once again, I just want to reiterate, please keep those families of those victims of that tragedy, that tragic accident, incident, whatever it is you want to call it, over the Potomac last night. Please keep them in your prayers tonight, as they are all hurting over how quickly, and again, it's like amazing how quick something like that can happen. Yeah. So, do me a favor. If you haven't already, head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account. It's free. And once you are there, signed up and signed in, make sure that you search up the American Perspective channel and hit that green follow button to get notified every time I go live. Before you take off, don't forget to hit those thumbs up and like buttons across all of my platforms, whether it is X, YouTube, Facebook, and of course the aforementioned Rumble. We will see you tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. Have a great rest of your evening, and good night, everybody.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.